And welcome back to the second episode of Johnny's Cackling Carnarium EDH Study Hall series. And today, I'm just going to give up on the whole idea of what is and is not in focus because whatever, it doesn't matter. The point is, the whole point of this series is to talk about Magic cards and talk about where they are relevant in EDH and whether they're not. This is my own personal opinion, and I'm not going to get too hung up on that. It's basically, I'm going to try and do my best to make this an audio podcast in video form. So I will be explaining what the cards are. I will be explaining the color, the casting cost, the type, all that stuff. We're going to go into some Oracle text. We're going to talk about, I did a little tweet survey, quick little check-in with people on Twitter, and found out where they go for their Oracle text. So I pulled up those sites. We're going to use those to make sure that we get the proper wording. We can find the rules text and go into this process of rebuilding my knowledge of Magic the Gathering and bringing you along with me. And it's one of those things where there's a big gap. Again, like I said, in my history of Magic the Gathering, this applies to many people, and I need to fix that. So I want to work on that, and this is the process I'm going to go through. And also because I've been hearing a lot of arena people are coming over to the LGS and they're actually showing up and looking in the cardboard. And when they see people playing EDH, they're going to probably be wondering, like, what are all those? Why are the artifacts brown? That looks like dirt, mud. No, that's just, those are awful looking cards. I mean, I don't even know what flanking means or what is phasing, that kind of stuff. So this, I want to be a series where people can go to it, and I will, over time, kind of organize what's in what series, what episode, and kind of you can break it down. Like beta is going to be the earliest episodes. We're going to go through the timeline of Magic the Gathering, going through the Wikipedia page here, explaining when the sets hit. What is basically going to go in the order that they were printed. So pretty much, revised. This is all core set right here. I think we'll go and check the dates to make sure. What are these? All the core sets? 7th edition? Yeah. So we'll get down to the expansion sets and we'll look for what was printed when, and base our timeline off of that. So right now we're starting with beta, the very first set. Yes, alpha was the first set, but beta was the full list. So what we left off with on our last episode was Benalish Hero, and Benalish Hero, I kind of tried talking about bans or banding, and unfortunately, I didn't do justice. I went over to look at Scryfall, and two sites really good for looking at Oracle text for cards or rules text that more detailed for the cards. There's Gatherer .wizards.com, and then another site called Scryfall. And Scryfall, you can do a side-by-side of the Oracle versus not this one. I'm sorry, the side-by-side is Wizards, and then Scryfall has links to a lot of other sites where you can go buying the cards, kind of more stats on the card. So Scryfall, these are both good sites for getting kind of official documentation on what the card does. So let's go ahead and look at the official Oracle text for what we're looking at for the actual ability. So banding is one of these weird combat tricks it's like a static combat trick built into a card, and the way it works is you can team cards up, and when they're doing blocking or attacking, they can work together, and then the person who's in control of the creatures with banding, or in the band of creatures working together, they decide where combat damage goes. So it's entirely possible to put 3 or 4 creatures together with banding and one without, and block a big creature, not lose any of your creatures, and kill off the big creature because you distribute the damage evenly. Now, I'm not exactly sure. I'm a little fuzzy on exactly what happens when it comes to trample. I've read some comments here in Gatherer where it suggests that you can throw all the trample damage into one creature. So I don't know. That leads me to need to do a little more homework on exactly what trample is. But to kind of go into the rules, the card text banding explains any creature with banding and up to one creature without can attack in a band. So like that group of creatures. Bands are blocked as a group. If any creature with banding you control are blocking, or any creatures with banding you control are blocking or being blocked by a creature, you divide that creature's combat damage, not its controller, among any of the creatures it's being blocked by or is blocking. So usually what happens in regular combat phase, you get to decide where your damage is going, and your opponent gets to decide where their damage is going. I think I'm getting that right. And banning basically says you get to decide where damage goes for both parties. Now, I'm assuming, and I'd have to look into this a little further, but I'm assuming if both opponents have banning creatures on both sides, then they decide I would assume they take control of their opponent's damage assignments. So basically, you lose control of your banning damage, but they lose control of their banning damage. So it kind of evens out. But the biggest issue with banning was they printed it through the core sets and into some of the expansion sets up through, I think, 5th edition, maybe 6th edition. And it became, I think Mark Rosewater talked about this in the past. The mechanic was confusing. It was explaining it, understanding it, kind of it muddled the combat phase and made things complicated for newer players. Like, it's one of those mechanics where you see this wall of text just explaining what banning is. It's not like you could fit that on a Magic card and make it feasible. It really it was like a cumbersome kind of mechanic, and that's a reason why we really did never see any more of it past the mid 90s. And ultimately it just kind of fell out of favor because it was a cumbersome kind of mechanic. So that's the short story. That's kind of the long-winded, long and short, whatever. That's my explanation of banding. You can go to Gatherer to get some more details. You can definitely there's definitely rules websites where you can talk to people who are specialists on the rules. They can give you better explanations than myself. But that's the basic breakdown. When it comes to EDH, this can be a valuable ability, but it's really just to say I'm gonna take just basically as a damage buffer. There is one creature from Fallen Empires, I believe, is Ication Skirmishers, and when we get to Fallen Empires, we'll talk about that card. But I'm pretty sure creatures that ban with that creature gain first strike. That's like the one time that banning becomes relevant, really, really relevant, because then the team that's tied in with that one creature now has a keyword ability that is very relevant. So that's kind of their design banning. We're gonna get moving along and do a few more sections of beta, and going into our next card here. So it was Benalish Hero was where we left off. The next is Berserk. Berserk is a card that many people loved and wanted more of, and for the longest time it didn't see reprints until I think from the Vault series, and then we did see it again reprinted in, I believe, a conspiracy set. So this is a neat combat trick where, like, in an infect deck, if you're playing modern and you know about this, if it's an infect, I think it's legacy. Right, it's a legacy staple. So this works in a legacy infect deck where you can basically blow out on turn 1, maybe, depending on if you really get that key first hand, like the first 7 cards that really pulls it off. Let's go ahead and pull that up in Gatherer and make sure. We're going to look at Oracle text because I think that wall of text might have been modified. So Berserk. All right. Go. There we go. Yeah, it was Conspiracy. Let's see. I think it shows what sets it shows. Conspiracy, Take the Crown, and then all sets was Alpha, Beta, Unlimited, and then there's some master sets going on in here. Looks like Vintage Masters. It was a rare, so it got a number of reprints. It was a mythic in Conspiracy, and looks like it was uncommon in the core sets here. So the Oracle text reads: cast this spell only before combat damage step. Target creature gains trample and gains +X +O until end of turn, where X is its power. At the beginning of the next end step, destroy that creature if it attacked this turn. So it is designed to be a one-off combat trick. And in a deck like Infect, it becomes a really relevant combat trick when you can do lethal damage up like 10 plus Infect after you've buffed it with all kinds of things like mutagenic growth and there's a couple other buff spells that are key in that deck. Now, as this relates to EDH, this isn't necessarily the strongest. Like, this can close things out, but I feel like this is one of those. It's one of those things. I don't know. I don't see it played a lot in Commander for the amount of Commander that I do play. The problem being, like, at this you need to wrap things up, and unless maybe a Xenaghost, yeah, like a Xenaghost deck might be able to pull this one off, where you're already kind of giving a creature a big buff. You're going to be working with creatures that have access to trample. It becomes much more relevant. This could be a good piece for something like a Muldrotha deck if you're going to be doing graveyard shenanigans to begin with. That could be handy as well. The fact that it is instant, the fact that it is 1 green, does make it more relevant for a card like, I'm going to bring this up because I'm kind of like, Isochron Scepter is one of those pet cards. I want it to work. I've always wanted it to work, but it's never quite been like a tier 1 card for competitive Magic. But to be able to put Berserk on your Isochron Scepter, that's pretty cool too. Being able to do this over and over, that would make it much more relevant. We have access to flashback. You can flashback abilities or ways to give your graveyard cards flashback as well. So there are ways to work this in, unless you're doing a really heavy aggro, like big beaters kind of combat deck. And Xenaghost is the one that comes to mind for me. Berserk is not necessarily going to fit into all of them, but it definitely can take someone by surprise from out of nowhere. So, I give this one a 50-50. Know your meta and know the deck that you want to put it in. I don't think you want to throw it in just any deck, because if you're dealing with, like, let's say if you know that your local meta has 1 or 2 players where someone's always playing a life game build, it's an uphill battle, and this might help you get closer, but you may find yourself needing to put something else in its place to really make the deck more relevant. So that's Berserk. Let's go on and see what's next up here. So after Berserk, we've got Birds of Paradise. Oh yeah. Birds of Paradise is a summon mana birds. In beta, they called it summon mana birds, probably to help indicate to players in the earliest days that this was in fact a creature that produced mana. And I gotta love this part right here. No tap symbol. The word tap to add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. This tap may be played as an interrupt. So there was a lot of in the earliest days of Magic, the vocabulary was different. The assumptions weren't the same as what we know today. All of your basic lands had tap this land to provide 1 mana of the indicated color. Nowadays, we just get a land with a color symbol, and we all know what it does because we have things like Arena showing us how the lands operate and work, and it's just kind of it's become second nature to the player base. So you don't need the same amount of words and vocabulary to make the same effect happen. But for Birds of Paradise, we'll go and check. I don't think we need to worry about the Oracle text. We don't need to go Oracle test. It's basically, if you play Magic the Gathering and you've seen any kind of creature that produces mana in some form or fashion, this operates very much the same way and makes mana of any color. And if you have them and you're playing green EDH, you play this card. This is an auto include. It fixes if you're playing multicolored, this fixes. If you're playing mono green, then no, okay, you don't really need this card. But anything where you have multiple colors, Birds of Paradise is an easy sell. So I mean, as far as a grade wise goes, sure, it's an A+, A, B+. I don't know. It's in the A's for sure. And this definitely is a card you want. Now, if you can get the $1,200 version from beta, that's super sweet, but you don't have to spend that kind of money. At one point in time, they had kind of been hovering around that $20 mark. I think that $20 price point was kind of after they stopped printing it I don't remember if they printed it in M13, but there was trying to reconnect. Great. Are we reconnected? Are we there? I think we're there. Okay. Sweet. So what happened was the Birds of Paradise did not get any further print runs. Let's go take a look at, I think it was Gather will tell us the sets. Yeah, there was a point in Magic's history where they had staples like Birds of Paradise and Lightning Bolt that they had in the core sets, and they had them for a long time, and then they just stopped printing them. And then it was kind of assumed they weren't coming back. And then they started reprinting them in like the early 2010s. So it was nice to have them in standard, but as soon as they stopped printing them in standard for a while, it got kind of sketchy because they weren't, yeah, like right here. So Birds of Paradise, you had it in the core set right through revised, fourth edition, fifth edition, sixth edition, seventh edition, first edition. The foils of this are supposed to be super expensive. They had an eighth edition. They brought them back in Ravnica. They brought it in 10th edition. So, like in 10th edition, Magic 2010, Magic 2011, Magic 2012, and there was like this. There was just an ocean of Birds of Paradise. You could get them for under $5, and it was just like, oh yeah, there's always Birds of Paradise, and then they just stopped printing them, and they didn't come back until Conspiracy Take the Crown, which is a big chunk of time. And looks like Guild Kit, so we were able to get them in the Gruul Guild Kit as well. These cards, I think, if we go to, let's go take a look at. Well, let's see, Birds of Paradise. I think we can look at the sets available. Yeah, you don't need to spend a fortune to get a Birds of Paradise, but the older ones, the foil ones, always command a higher price. I think there you go, $627 for the 7th edition foil. If you have one of those sitting around, that's go pay off a car payment. But yeah, it looks like they have crept up a bit. They're not quite the $10 price, $10, $15, $20 price point they had been. I think let's go to MTG stocks, take a look at that. And this is if you're looking like at pricing history, MTG stocks is definitely one of those sites that I like to go to just to see where a card has been and where it's going. Especially if you want to try and play that finance game. Birds Paradise. Okay. So price history on, it'll come up in a bit. Yeah, they're showing pretty similar pricing. So it's still under $10, generally speaking. And yeah, there's like right here, like I remember this was back when you still had, I think that's the core set, M13 was showing up here. Yeah, this is M12. They were still in heavy supply. And then they went out of print and they just slowly crept. And then they've been hovering around here. I think, where did Conspiracy Take the Crown? They're not even showing Conspiracy here. This must have been around where Conspiracy Take the Crown hit, because we have that dip. And it gets down to that $5 range, which is good. I imagine we will probably start seeing, every time like they don't print it in some supplemental set, it definitely it'll probably see another bump every time that happens. I think hopefully we'll see another printing in the next year or two. I don't know what the spec is on that, but there have been enough of these printed, especially if it went out in Conspiracy Take the Crown. So there's a lot of them out there, and definitely a card you want for EDH. So there it is. Let's move on to our next card in beta. Let's get back here, Birds of Paradise. Go to the Black Knight. Black Knight. This is one of the original knights. It is the original knight. There are two, Black Knight and White Knight. The Black Knight was 2 black for a 2/2 with first strike and protection from white. All this can be very, very relevant. Giving this a buff with something like Giant Growth made it really useful. It could take out anything that it touched. It would eat a Serra Angel if you did something like that. Downside, it was boltable, so you could definitely take it out with a Lightning Bolt. Now, unless you're playing a Knight's Tribal that involves black, and that they do exist, so you have that option, I believe, in EDH. This isn't the strongest. I mean, if it's in an aura deck where you can buff it up, or an equipment deck, that's where Black Knight starts getting a bit more relevant. But this was part of a 2-card series where you have Black Knight, White Knight, and they're kind of like the polar opposites. And we saw this through the set, through the expansions even. We saw other cards that did similar things, or were kind of modeled in this way. It's a fun card. It's decent, but obviously for 2 black mana, there's plenty of other things you can do in EDH. So unless you're really heavy on a Knight Tribal deck, this is probably not the way to go. Finally, I think we can wrap it up here. The old Big Daddy Black Lotus. So Black Lotus beta going for $22,000. The reason being, it is the icon of Magic the Gathering. It is Christopher Rush. So he's a famous painter who passed away in the last couple of years. And he's just like, it's an iconic card for its power, for its image, for the epic stories that have come across. This is part of the Channel Fireball combo. That is the card Channel 2 green. It's 2 green spell, a spell costing 2 green. You can pay life and get a lot of mana. You can use this in a dark ritual, or you use this in a land and a fireball and channel, and basically end the game on turn 1. In the very earliest days, that was the power play, and for good reason, it got cards like Channel banned from the format. So Black Lotus we'll go into Oracle text, because you definitely, this is one of those weirdo kind of a weirdo card where you see the original text, add 3 mana of a single color of your choice to your mana pool, then is discarded. Adds 3 mana. Tapping this artifact can be played as an interrupt. So for that, they're indicating that it can be played. You can use that at instant speed. Well, interrupt and instant are basically the same thing. They did away with interrupt several years ago because it became another one of those things. Well, what's faster? What is it? Most people played interrupts at instant speed, so it really didn't matter, and they just said this isn't worth it. So they got rid of interrupt. Interrupt is technically supposed to be faster and supposed to trump a instant speed, but it became a non-issue. They just got rid of it and made everything instant speed. Black Lotus is so famous. In fact, you've got people like Sam from Ristic Studies did a fantastic piece. If you ever have a chance, go over there and check out his work. And he did a piece on Black Lotus that was just a great narrative and documentary about the card, about the history behind it, about the artist, about the stories behind it. It's a really great piece. But I think I want to go ahead and make sure we get a look at that Oracle text, because it does matter. They used to call the mono artifact, and they did change that. So Black Lotus. Boom. All right. So Oracle text simplifies things. Tap, sacrifice Black Lotus, add 3 mana of any one color. Done. And yeah, the Vintage Masters expansion, that must have been an online thing. I don't think, Vintage Masters, I'm pretty sure, was online only, and it only ever showed up in alpha, beta, and unlimited. After unlimited, we received revised. They call it revised, and that's where the Black Lotus and all of the Moxen, the Ancestral Recalls, the Time Walk, the power cards, the Power 9, as you may hear them referred to, were done away with. There was no more. They were gone, and I missed that boat by, I don't know, 6 months. I had seen them. I had seen them in play. I saw them on cafeteria tables so far back. That's the kind of history that I have in Magic the Gathering. I've seen them. I think I even held one once upon a time. But I just did not have that foresight to snap them up when they were only $70, as opposed to the absurd pricing that they have. Let's look at MTG stocks real quick. Black Lotus. Black Lotus 9 of 9. Blacker Lotus. No. Black Lotus right here. What are they showing here? There's like, what are they? They're not even showing. Wow. So let's see. They're showing us the unlimited, and it's one of those reserve list cards. People who bought into it are just going to sit on it. That's all it is. They're going to sit on that. And what's that? Unlimited, all-time low, all-time high. What are they showing market pricing? They're not even really buy a Card Kingdom for $13. No, that does not happen. The Alpha Edition. Oh, that's insane. All-time high went for $22,000. So, I mean, there's a lot of feeling and power and money behind this card. It is epic. And unfortunately, pretty sure if we go over to the ban list here, I'm pretty sure it's not playable in Black Lotus. There you go. So if you are playing Magic the Gathering EDH format, you don't play Black Lotus, unfortunately. And for good reason, because this would take you from turn 0 to turn 4 right away. And there's a lot you can do in EDH for 4 mana and that would just be totally backbreaking. There's good reason they got rid of this one. It's extra fast mana, and that's the reason it got the old banhammer. So I think that's a good ending point right there for tonight. Nice little. Hopefully, I gave you a decent enough explanation for bans and banding, and we got a little further into the beta history of Magic the Gathering. Let me scoot around here. Black Lotus. We'll get to Black Vice next time. Yeah, the series. Last episode was about 30 minutes. I'm gonna try and keep them shorter. I don't know how far along I've gone here, but that's definitely. Oh my God, we're gonna wrap this up here. So thank you for joining. If you have any questions, hit me up on Twitter at Johnny Slivers, and then you can leave comments in the video, you can like, subscribe, all that good stuff. But basically, I'm going to do my best to make sure at least the audio is going to be something you can just listen to in the background. We can talk about the old cards, and I'm going to muddle my way through the history of Magic the Gathering and hopefully take some of you with me. So thank you for joining me. I hope this was helpful and interesting and shed some light on the cards that either you forgot or didn't know about. And until next time, have a great day, and may your top decks be epic.